Welcome to the Business Trendsetter podcast, where we talk about trends and how to use them to grow your business. My name is Manny Turan.
And I'm Adam Hartung.
We're Spark Partners. We're here every week to show you the power of trends and how to use them in your business day in and day out. And there's a pretty big reason why we talk about trends, and there's four in particular, plus another couple that we've been talking about over the past couple of years. And the top four that we talked about 3 years ago when we first launched this podcast were AI, mobility, asynchronous life, and of course the gig economy. And we kind of added some environmental concerns and demographics as some of the top four to six. So it's going to be kind of an interesting exercise here, Adam, to kind of go through those top four, and then we'll go after the second two or the last two and talk about how they've really been center stage over the past 3 years, especially in light of this pandemic. That what it did is, of course, it accelerated these trends. Things like movie theaters were already dying, and of course, they're pretty much dead now. Schools going virtual, it was kind of going in that direction, and then the pandemic made it happen faster. So let's kick it off talking about those top four and go from there.
Sure. And I want to start with mobility. And I remember when we wrote Thrive to the Future, which people can still download from the Spark Partners website and they can read it. It's still very timely. I think anybody who hasn't read it should read it today, even though it's 3 years old, because we did outline four trends that we said were going to be long lived for, 15 years. And when we put mobility in there were some people who came back at me and said, Adam, come on, get real. I mean, everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's got a laptop, What do you mean by mobility being a big trend? Like, it's already here. It's already happened. It's already done. But in fact, the reality is that we've barely scratched the surface on what we mean by real mobility and how you can get things done and how you can work. And since we have written that, there's been a lot of reinforcing behaviors that have come along that have extended the mobility. And one of them was the implementation of 5G networks. So for most people, a 3G network was plenty of throughput to make their phone calls or scan their websites or play with social media. But what happened with 5G is it's making it possible for us to get more and more integrated. Real time voice. We can run multiple calls at the same time. It allows for a much better interaction between businesses, business to business, and allows for much better interaction between people as employees, customers, and suppliers and businesses. So those are the kinds of things we look at in terms of what's happening in the world. Is when you see this investment in infrastructure and things like 5G, and it starts to let you know that that's going to increase pretty seriously the kind of mobility you can have. Your need to go to an office is going to get less and less. If we couple on top of that things like these metaverse glasses that are coming out, we've got Meta, Facebook with a $700 set, Apple's launched a $3,500 set. It's going to get to where your ability to have interactions are going to be more three-dimensional. We had voice that was one dimension. We had video that's two dimensional. But then with 3-dimensional, we start to bring in not only those characteristics, but how we are integrating with other people, sitting in a room, etc. And right now, it looks pretty hokey, and it's hard to kind of think it was going to be a big deal. But hey, that's what we thought of a lot of technologies when they first came out. People first users of cell phones with those big bricks to their ears.
Big bricks, yeah.
Yeah. We looked at them like, who are you? And what do you think you're doing? And why do you need that? But that's why all new technologies come along. There's somebody with a poorly met unmet need, and they say, wow, that's the technology for me, and I'll pay up for it. And right now, there are people with poorly met and unmet needs, and we're going to see that matchup happening. Exactly. I'm the first to admit that I don't see the profitability right now in the applications that Facebook or Apple has, but both of them are indicating that they're trying to build out a big developer community. And we know that Facebook recently released its AI library to its developers so that they could try to use that in terms of developing their applications. So the 5G technology is going to be big for metaverse. It's going to be big in terms of allowing us to have avatars, the way we communicate. So that supports the whole mobility question. The whole work from home is a big issue that comes around for mobility, because now what happens is we don't have to go to an office at all unless our bosses are foolish enough to make us. And so that rush to work from home was part of what happened in the pandemic that increased mobility. And it also means that we're not going to go back to the office, which means that the excess commercial office space that we've talked about in some previous podcasts will continue. And so we're going to have a lot of empty offices and a lot of empty buildings, and there's going to be a need to convert those into something useful. And we don't yet know what that will be. The next one is growth in e-commerce. we used to do some shopping in stores and some shopping from e-commerce. Well, e-commerce continues to grow and store sales continue to decline. And so that again is mobility. We're on the road, we're out there, we're doing things. We don't have to stop now and go to a store to buy something that we want. So that is a reinforcement of mobility. When you look and see how the e-commerce world is continuing to grow, then people are getting more and more mobile. And what does that tell you? It means that you have to support that. So in the old days, you thought maybe of e-commerce as somebody buying microphones for their computers or glasses for their house, but increasingly it's getting much more involved than that. I've mentioned to people that when I put in a wine room in my house, I bought all of the cabinetry and everything on e-commerce. We're buying a lot more stuff. I bought infrastructure for my home on e-commerce, got in
Hmm.
air conditioners and some big appliances and things that multi-thousand-dollar purchases through e-commerce because I can get better delivery or I can get the specific model I want, that kind of thing. And so that's all part of mobility. It lets me buy a product that I want that I can have shipped from New Mexico or from Illinois or someplace else. That's being part of being mobile.
Right.
So it's really the whole idea of this immersive technology is just at the beginning, just at the forefront. But I really think it's going to continue to be something that's going to allow us to be more and more mobile.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned those big, the hokey cell phones that first came out,
Yeah,
and now, of course, there's watches that do the pretty much the same thing, and of course, there's this. And one thing that's interesting is in probably the next 5, 10 years, you're going to have these VR glasses that are going to look like what I'm wearing now, right?
yeah,
They're going to have all these things. And something else that I just thought about is you're naming off these big companies like Google and Apple and so forth. Is even though you and I are here every week on our podcast talking about trends, these organizations, especially the ones that Adam and I have sort of favor because of their adoption and how they actually manage trends and actually are there at the forefront. They have entire teams that do what we do. So, in a matter of speaking, we're bringing you a taste of what they do on a day-to-day basis. And if you have a small or medium company, we're giving you that sort of perspective in order for you to do the same thing that they do, so that when the hockey puck arrives, you can go to where it's going to be, not where it is
yeah,
today.
yeah, exactly. I think the next one I'd like to turn to is we talked about asynchronous work, which again, asynchronous work comes from mobility. I mean, once you're able to be mobile, then it's like, well, why do I have to talk to you now? Can't I interact with you when I want to, when it's most productive for me? And the tools that we've been talking about were email, texting. Those are the primary tools that allow us to work asynchronously. But increasingly, we're seeing the growth of social media fit into that. People are being able to say, hey, look, I want to post on social media what I'm doing, or I want to interact with my colleagues. I want to, but bigger than that is reach out to businesses. Back again to when I bought $6,000 worth of shelving for a wine room. I actually did that on Thanksgiving Day, and I actually did it sitting at my computer, and I did it using social media. The website itself for the two companies I was looking at to buy had some issues with them that it was difficult for me to get the design worked out. And so what I did was I went to their Facebook pages, and then I used Instagram to see videos of how people were doing installation. And I was able to chat real time with people outside the United States about the products I was interested in purchasing. And the chat on Facebook was far, far better than anything on the website they'd set up, which didn't surprise me because, website chats, you tend to put them on there and then it's hard to man them and keep them functional. Whereas something on Facebook is there all the time because people are thinking about the interactions and what could be going on. And I'm seeing a lot more people looking out there and saying, "Hey, I can promote my products. I can provide customer service." But, people like to complain when they have a problem, and most customer service complaints you have to complain at a certain time of the day and a certain process. But that doesn't stop us from complaining. We can go onto a website, social media site, or we could go to, like if it's a travel thing, we go to Expedia or TripAdvisor. There's all these different social media sites we can go to and complain. And the smart companies today are monitoring that, and they're saying, "Hey, look, if a complaint comes up, then let's figure out how we can react to it." I was recently had a client company that a large investor in their publicly traded company was brought to task by the SEC, and they filed a lawsuit against this investor. Well, immediately I learned about this on social media, and I got the SEC press release, and I was able to then immediately look and see who else is reading this, and Twitter started to light up with retail investors that identified that this very large institutional investor had an issue, was under investigation by the SEC, and they were all curious, what does this mean for our company? What does it mean
Yeah.
for the stock price? So social media has immediately had a bigger impact. Like in one day, it starts to affect this, what's going on with the share trading of a publicly traded NASDAQ company. So I think people need to recognize that this asynchronous business thing is really, it involves a lot of social media, and the social media keeps getting better. The tools keep getting better, and there's not just, there's this tendency to want to think that it's just teenagers or even younger people that are abusing each other with, really bad things that they're saying or images they're saying on these websites. And I try to reinforce to people, I don't like that bad behavior, and I hope that the social media companies get control of it. But it is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what's going on. Yes, there's a lot of miscommunication in the political sphere on social media, but that, that's not for business to say no. It's not a good reason for you to ignore your customers and your suppliers when these become really good tools for being able to communicate.
Yeah, it's something else to note is, as far as the general buying power, obviously many baby boomers are retiring or really stepping out of the large purchases. Millennials and Gen Z are really coming up as the largest consumer group in America. With I'm reading some text here, 137 million people, 165 billion dollars worth of commerce comes through that segment, and of course that segment in particular is keyed into the asynchronous work, asynchronous life, mobility. So if you're not actually on these platforms, you're going to miss the boat, and you're going to have the that buying power group that's buying from you.
And again, back to the way we talk about asynchronous work. Another thing that's happened in the last couple of years that is going to get a lot bigger really quickly is you take the 5G communication capability and you take our ability. We're not even in AI yet. I'm just talking about take your own ability to set parameters. And what you can do is you can set up parameters with your suppliers. You can set up parameters for how your operations of your business. You can set up parameters for shipping or interactions, order taking, in which what happens is you have data-driven decision making. Now, I'm not trying to talk about something fancy here. This is as simple as, okay, when orders are coming in or when things are happening, we want that data to be quick, come in, and then we can set parameters so that decisions can be made without us being involved. That's asynchronous work. Now, what happens is I didn't have to look at the data. I didn't have to figure out what was going on. I let another device make a decision about what's going to happen at that time. And then we can get alerts. You can send those alerts to us whenever we want, immediately, delayed, whenever we want to look at them. I recently was interacting with a company, and I really wanted to talk with them on the weekend. And but all of their data-driven alerts were set for Monday. Now, I don't think that's a good decision on their part, but they had set it up so that basically whenever I had this issue that came up, I was able to find out that they weren't going to deal with it until Monday. But that was, again, asynchronous on their part. They sit there and they didn't have to tell me. I wasn't listening to a recording. I wasn't sitting there wondering what the heck's going on. They came back and said, look, our decision model is that we will deal with this on Monday. And so, okay, that's what's going to happen then, right? So data-driven decisions are becoming much more common. This is not even AI, and that augmented with the 5G networks means that we continue to grow our ability to work asynchronously. So these things that we started talking about in a fair order 5 to 7 years ago really were a big thing. 3 years before the pandemic, took off during the pandemic, but we're far from reaching the end of these. It's going to continue to grow, and I encourage all business people to be thinking about how they get more mobile and how they can much more be working asynchronously to get things done.
Yeah, these, the AI, to talk about AI a little bit, I was doing some research earlier today, and there are AI tools right now that will write things for you. Of course, we talked about Chat GPT a few times. There's ones that generate art, generate music, generate videos for you, automatically generate TikTok videos, do your own avatar, create PowerPoint presentations for you, edit pictures, edit videos, summarize your notes. I mean, you're talking about this is the tip of the iceberg with AI. It's been here a long time. We talked about that in a few months ago in one of our podcasts, but it's just going to continue to grow as a tool that should be used and learned by all.
Again, I chuckle because when we wrote Thrive to the Future 3 years ago, and we said one of the four biggest trends was artificial intelligence, I heard people saying Adam mobility's in the past and artificial intelligence hasn't arrived. So they were, telling me they were wrong on two accounts that we weren't wrong on, because AI was there 3 years ago. We saw it coming. When what we had happened between now and the last, and let's say 6 months ago, that's changed a lot of opinion, is these large language models have been made available for people to use, like you said. So people have been developing neural networks, people have been developing machine learning models. This has been going on for a number of years, 10, 15 years in a big way. They'd applied that in some decision making. But then when they figured out, they started using large learning models several years ago, they started saying, how could we train just based on data to see if we could get machines to do things? And that was going on, but a lot of people weren't paying attention. You and I, of course, saw it in the background, but it was really Chat GPT. When OpenAI came out and they put Chat GPT out and people could see language generated, that really got them to say, oh, okay, now we kind of see what's happening in AI without even really understanding large language models. But that is something that people are going to be developing. We're going to see them used. Any large language model is literally saying, I want to accumulate a whole bunch of data and see if I can self-generate algorithms to sort it and utilize it. The better companies will not be the ones that just pump data in and sit and wait, because we know that mistakes are made. We've seen some
Yeah.
pretty. Saw a lawyer that foolishly let a Chat GPT write something for a judge, and he got in a whole bunch of trouble for that because Chat GPT invented cases. So you're kind of foolish today if you rely on that. But using that as your start point, as you said, with all those applications, initially with images and initially with your PowerPoint, saves you a lot of time, right? Saves you a lot of time to use these large language models, and they'll get better. Now, there's a fear, and even some of the founding technologists in this field fear that these things, there's no limit to how much they can grow, right? Because you just keep bigger your hard drive, the more computing capacity
Yeah.
you have. We see no limits to how much they can grow. So there's a fear that eventually they get smarter than us, and if they get smarter than us, we don't know what that would imply. So we don't know what that future holds. But for right now, it's certainly true that most AI, if it's going to have much value to you, you need human intervention to look at what's going on, to train the large language models on the right data sets. So there's reliability to them and in terms of what they can get
Hey,
done.
Adam, let me ask you a question. Is rock and roll the devil?
I'm laughing because I do remember as a young man hearing that. Right. Absolutely. It's going to be the end of the world, right? Yeah. Anybody listening to
Yeah.
that stuff? Oh, I forgot. That's a great phrase. I also want to put out there that the CHIPS Act, which got passed, another reinforcement to artificial intelligence, right? What it did is to say we're not going to be relying on offshore technology for the future. So by passing the CHIPS Act, we see more reinforcement around digitization and the implementation of data-driven decision making, and then that gets you to AI. So as we look forward, what we can see is there's going to be more chips made in America. We're going to see NVIDIA and these guys continue to grow. We're going to see Apple and Microsoft and Facebook coming out with their own chips in this field. There'll be some competition, and it's just going to make it more profuse, right? I mean, you're going to have AI built into these goggles, into the immersive systems in the future, and that's going to help you to know how to use the tools so that they can, instead of being just a wash in data that you can't know sort out, it'll help making those decisions for you. So everybody kind of knows we're a bit at the beginning of applied artificial intelligence. We've had it for a long time, but the implementation will not just be writing papers or being worried about whether high school students are using Chat GPT instead of writing their own papers.
Yeah, I think it still takes a fundamental knowledge of the particular framework. Like you said, these are tools. These are tools that should be used in business, but it's still going to take somebody with a professional domain knowledge to go through it, like the lawyer. There's a reason they still teach compass work in the military, even though that we've got GPS galore. You've got to understand the fundamentals of how things work before you can really get to that next level. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the whole thing with ESG and the
Let's do
environment.
the gig economy first. That was one of the original four. And in the original four, we had the gig economy. And so we built a lot of that based on demographics, though, right? We took a look at what the demographic profiles are and how were people going to continue to work in companies and what were the incentives to work in companies versus incentives to work independently. So once you had mobility tools, asynchronous tools, and you've got some ability to sort this out with some data driven decision making, then it makes workers not, it's not like I don't have to sit there and let, be on some kind of a supply of an assembly line of information. Now what happens is I could interact with this information as needed. So those things built us towards allowing people to be in a gig economy. And of course, we saw the great resignation towards the end of the pandemic. And we've seen a lot of people say, look, if you want me to come back in the office, then, I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to insist on hybrid work. And because we have too few workers, that's going to continue to go down that road. Now, what's amazing to me is the media. But again, I'm always, how do I interact with media? I'm a huge consumer. I bring lots of it in, but I never forget that Will Rogers once said, I never stop. I always read the newspaper every day. That's why I'm the dumbest man alive. And this was just a humorous way of saying you can't believe everything you read in the newspaper, right? And you
Right.
have to realize there's a point of view, and you have to realize, what's trying to be said by that newspaper, perhaps editorially or perhaps by that writer, and their limited, perhaps, background around these topics. But one thing's for sure: the old adage that dog bites man does not belong in news, but man bites dog is news, still dominates. And so, what people look for is salacious material. So, if you get a
Yeah.
Jamie Dimon, so here, Jamie Dimon said a year and a half ago that the new technology that was available in China that was allowing them to qualify loans in under 120 seconds, a process that was taking 2 days at a bank or longer, was now done in a matter of seconds. He said everybody should be scared spitless of it. But people forgot about that because Chinese shut it down for their own political reasons. They stopped that technology from moving forward. But what did he do? Well, his reaction, instead of saying, I better go figure out how they did that and get this decision making model and have technologists, he started saying, we're going to make everybody come back to the office at JP Morgan Chase. Jamie Dimon, head of the largest bank in North America. Again, remember, this guy's 67 years old, right? And how in touch is he with workers? How in touch is he with demographics? He's
Yeah.
extraordinarily wealthy. I mean, he's probably a billionaire because of all the stock options and everything he's had at JP Morgan Chase. He's run the bank for 17 years, and before that, he ran several banks. So a very, very wealthy individual who, in touch with the common man, I got a little struggle with that one,
Not so
right?
much.
So can he force everybody in his bank to come back? No. If he opens up jobs, will they come? Well, we'll see. We'll see. The question will become. I remember 10 years ago when he had a big push to open a bunch of branches, and that turned out to be a waste of money, and it never fulfilled itself, right? So I think that those headlines like J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon to force everybody to bring back to the office. You got to remember that's a man bites dog story. And I think the same with Elon Musk. The guy seems to be the second most desirous man of headlines behind Donald Trump in the world. And so he just wants to be headline making all the time, right? So
Yeah.
he says stuff every single day. He says stuff on Twitter, etc. And he's saying, everybody ought to come to the office. For a guy who started off in tech and then built this company that was very forward thinking about electrifying America, right? Very forward thinking about electric cars and solar panels and all these very forward thinking things he does. For some reason, in the last 5 years, the guy's fallen into a trap. He's like sitting back now, almost reverting back and saying, I want
Yeah.
everybody to come to the office. I want everybody to work the way they did before. I don't know why he's moved that way, but again, it's a man bites dog statement.
Right.
It's not going to be the way people are going to work. People I'm hearing right and left, or people are saying, "Look, I'm just not going to put up with it." I was talking to a PhD a PhD in the sciences recently, and this guy who was telling me how he was just fed up with the work practices in the United States. He was moving to Germany. He's like, I'm not even going to stay in the United States because I'm expected to work 80 hours a week, and and all these high expectations. And he said, I can move to Germany. My cost of living will go down. My pay will stay the same. I'll have a much higher quality of life. I'll be able to work a lot fewer hours. So, when somebody who's 35 years old with a PhD, who's published multiple papers, says, heck, I'm moving to Germany, that tells you, look, he's saying I'm not going to live the American lifestyle the way people are trying to make me do it. If I could work the hours and things, America's the least vacation country in the world. We have the least protection for workers. We have all these things. So young people are saying, I'm not going to play that game. I'm just not going to do it. And a lot of older people are saying, I'm not going to play that game, And so the whole gig economy is primed for explosive growth, where it's 35, 36% of the the economy today. I've predicted it'll be half of the economy by 2026, and I still think that's going to be true. It's a hard number to measure, and the data usually comes a year and a half late, so we'll see. But it's just no way that you're going to stop people from working independently and having the freedom and advantages that you get.
Yeah, it is moving very fast. And just today, there's all these platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, and they're just basically an outlet. And I know a lot of people that have made that transition from the day to day, W-2 job to working the 1099 or consulting work. And sometimes there's even a bridge. Sometimes they're doing side hustles, right? They're
Yeah.
working during the day and then they have a side hustle at night, and they get to the point where they transition. A friend of mine just did it now. I mean, he's an engineer, rank and file, worked for a big aerospace company, and he kind of had it. He was there for 16 years and said, you know what? I don't want to deal with the politics. I can do much more efficient work at home. And what happened is they were forcing him to go back to the office. And he said, I'm done. So he checked out, he made that big decision. But at the end of the day, it was a decision that was better for him and his family. And I think he's going to be more successful doing it.
When I talk, I've had a good benefit to work for a long time, and I talk to young people, and they'll talk about the nature of their work. And when they talk about things that dissatisfies them, it's frequently along this notion of, I was asked to do something that I don't think I should have been asked to do, or I've been asked to do something, and rather than being asked to do something and this is and being described the end, what do I want to deliver? I'm told, not asked to do it towards the goal, but rather told in micro how to go do something.
Yeah.
Even if I don't think that'll get to the goal, I'm being told that I have to work that way. And then it's the whole issue of, well, when I'm working and I'm being told what to do, is my boss treating everybody the same? Or we're being paid the same, or we're being treated the same? And frequently the answer is no. I'm finding out that somebody that smokes cigarettes gets better with the boss because they go out and smoke a cigarette in the alley together, or I find out that because they went to the same alma mater, or if some other affinity element of those
Yeah.
people has caused that person to be dissatisfied with their work. Gig work takes that away. What happens is we start saying, you can't hire me to do a gig job without telling me what the deliverable is. You can't micromanage how I get it done. All you can do is give me the job, ask for a price, and
Yeah.
agree on the delivery date. And if I don't make the deliverable on the date, then we'll talk about whether you pay the full fee. But there's a lot of managers who just are lazy, and it's lazy managers that hate
Yeah.
the gig economy. And I calling Elon Musk and Jamie Dimon lazy is kind of an extreme thing, but I don't. It's mentally lazy.
Yeah. I think for them, it's more a
They
matter
should
of
be
control.
demanding their lower level employees be as careful about getting jobs done as they do as senior people.
Yeah, and I think maybe for them it's a matter of control, not so much of laziness. Or maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, I think it's protecting their organization and not being comfortable that at lower levels in the organization, at the managerial level, people are able to actually say what the task is, say what the goal is, and hand the job out and price it effectively. They're just concerned that people can't do that. And so they fall back on, we'll just make them all come into the office and we'll randomly tell them what we want to do. But I couldn't work that way. I struggled to work that way when I was a young man, and it was forced on all of us, and I found it a very big struggle. And now today, people are sort of like, yeah, why would I do that? So if you're over 40, why would you do it? But if you're under 30, why would you do it? Right? So there are a few people that are stuck. I mean, if you've got serious health issues, insurance is a big deal, right? And the way we do healthcare and insurance in America, you might have to work for a big corporation because it's a big part of your life. So people do get into situations where they really need to be there. And then there are people who enjoy office politics. I have a buddy from business school who politics is just in his blood. I mean, the guy thinks of all the political issues in a corporation the way I would think about, numbers. and I was like, how did you see that? How did you see it coming? Well, his brain works that way for whatever reason. So he's very comfortable in these very complicated, large organizations. So they'll be there for those people. But for many of us, this whole gig economy is going to grow, and I think it'll probably end up 50 to 65% of the economy, and it'll probably still out there because you'll still have the other big corporations that will have people in them that will work in a more traditional manner.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that unfold. So in the next few minutes here, let's talk about the environmental angle, and then if we have time, we'll go into one of the deeper things with demographics, which kind of touches on all these other ones.
Yeah, so I've been working with the language now for about a year. What do we want to call this? And sustainability. Well, people think of sustainability can apply in a lot of different ways. Is your business model sustainable? For example, is the environment sustainable, or is my company sustainable, or is my job sustainable? So the word sustainable I don't like very much, but it's a word we're going to use a lot. So sustainability, another way I put it, is environmental awareness. Just we are aware of our environment, so we can think about stuff. A long, long time ago, people just threw their trash out the door and didn't think about where the trash is. And when I was a boy, we had the town dump where people went and dumped things out, and there was a constant 24-hour-a-day fire going there, right? And people would just go dump things and burn it, and where they put it, when the river would flood, which was about once every 6 or 7 years, the river would flood through the dump and haul stuff away, and everybody said, "Oh, that's a good thing, right? Because it cleans our dump up." So that's the way it was 55 years ago, right? And so we've well moved beyond that. We're much more aware of environmental activities and what's going on. So one I want to bring up is ESG, which is environment, social governance, right? And awareness. And some of the big investor groups out there and institutional investors have said they want to see an ESG dashboard for publicly traded companies. And their goal there is they say, if you think about sustainability, if you think about environmental awareness, then it can be good for your business. You can save money in terms of your operations. You can do more recycling, and there's just a lot of ways around how you manage your business. You'll be more aware, and we think that's good long term for profitability, and probably short term for profitability, and also probably good for sales because there's a lot of customers that care about sustainability. On the other side of this, you have a place like Texas, where you have a governor who signed a law that said that if you evaluate your investments based on ESG, then you can't do business in Texas. Again, pretty badly cited, okay? Not looking long term, not thinking about the trends. That's an effort to try to say, hey, look, I don't want to go there. And since I don't want to go there, I'm going to try to mandate you can't go there. And again, that's back to the headlines, what's going on in the country. Those are not the majorities, right? It's not the majority of people who want to say, I want to ignore the environment. In every single poll of any kind, the right, left, or from any organization says people are now much more environmentally aware and they care.
Yeah. And, we talk about politics here, of course, on the podcast, but we're not political. But sometimes it just, as far as doing business, you've got to understand that whether you believe in man-made climate change or not, your customers care. And so I get into, have a lot of friends on both the left and the right. And I get in these discussions where I still have a lot of the folks saying, hey, this is all just, mockery or malarkey or whatever. But then I ask them, what about your customers? What do they think? And then they kind of shut up after that.
Yeah, that's what a trend is all about. It's what it's all about.
All right. So in the next minute here, Adam, how can we summarize and give our audience some perspective on these trends?
So the issue here is, how does this apply to business? So we bring all these up. One of the things, demographics is a trend that applies to all of them. Old people, the world is getting older, with the exception of India, right? And so India and Brazil are producing, but anyway, it's an older environment. We're going to have to pay attention to demographics. They all feed into these business trends that we're talking about today. And so demographics applies to all of them. And people need to just be very thoughtful about the fact that you can't do business the way you used to, because there just aren't even the people there to do it if you could make them do it.
Very well said, Adam. I think for our listeners, just keep your eye on the trends, listen to our podcast, stay involved, process what you read, process what you see. And with that, we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks a lot, Manny.
Cheers.